They're trying to
Yes,
get that. They're trying to get. They think that muscle protein synthesis is coming from the insulin signaling. That's so they got it the wrong way around. I mean, that video that I did on leucine in a fasted state, just putting in the leucine actually still increased muscle protein synthesis even in
they're
a insulin
insulogenic, aren't
suppressed
they?
state.
Yeah,
What was that?
they're insulogenic sort
Yeah,
of amino acids. So
yeah, they
you're
are
achieving the same thing without having the AGEs and
exactly.
the glycation, the associated negatives of putting 800 grams of sugar down your neck. So
Yeah, precisely. I mean, the whole purpose is the reason to the reason for insulin to signal insulin is so you can signal IGF-1 and mTOR1. That's the reason for it. Because in primitive organisms millions of years ago, there wasn't something IGF-1 didn't exist on its own, and neither did insulin. It was basically insulin IGF-1. It was the same thing. It was the same sort of mechanism. It just in complex organisms became separated. But that's why when insulin goes up, so does IGF-1 by similar magnitude. So, and you don't need a massive amount to signal for protein synthesis. The only time you need massive amounts is to basically increase adipose tissue. I think they got it the wrong way around. I don't know why. To this day, I haven't been able to work out. There's been, when it actually all started, where insulin was. I think people got confused. Got a lot of.
I know
confusion.
where it started.
It's like if a bit helps, more will help even more. Sort of attitude.
I'm just moving. Yeah. It started from a few years back, basically. This idea of driving in nutrients after the workout phase, so you'll be getting a higher, influx of stuff to build muscle with. So what a lot of them started to use the impetus to grow the muscle. So a lot of them are doing like post workouts with 100, 150 grams of carbs, using exogenous insulin to sort of absorb that. And that's with the whole thing. It's like the same with the Seco thing. Like they're looking at it for such a broad view, but not looking at it from the biology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's sort of it's just reductionist research basically in the way they viewed it. It's again, they've lost the plot on that front, where protein synthesis is really about leucine. Fundamentally, it's leucine, and actually, if you actually take BCAAs, you actually cross inhibit. You actually reduce the effect of leucine anyway.
You need more leucine as a result.
Yeah, exactly. You do need more leucine. I prefer using leucine separately, plus with amplifying leucine's effect with taurine. I think they miss that. You don't even need basically the carbs or the insulin or anything like that when you're amplifying mTOR that way, because both leucine and taurine raise insulin signaling in a state of anabolism. And actually,
I mean, I can say, sorry for interrupting. I can say
okay.
that I've been experimenting with like an animal-based approach, and like my carbohydrate intake each day is below 15 grams. It's been like that for months now, with the exception of twice maybe. And my recovery, training ability, performance has not been impacted by it at all.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't.
The only caveat of that is that you have to be adapted properly. So you have to be in a position where you're putting in the fat as well, so that your body's got something to work with.
You've got to have the energy. It's got to come from somewhere. And that's it. And your energy requirements go up, especially when you're really working hard and all that. So that's very important. It's a question whether you want quality energy that's not going to do damage to your mitochondria, or do you want but as you said, you've got to be fat adapted to be able to do this style, the carnivorous, the keto sort of, or low grade keto type anabolic carnivore style bodybuilding. but it
Yeah.
does work. But unfortunately, a lot of people out there are trying to use um, the wrong sort of biohacks. I think insulin is really a wrong sort of biohack to use. Long term, you're going to cause yourself far too much problems health wise.
Yeah. Yes. It's quite a. It's a strange topic. People probably watch this. People like bodybuilders that follow me and think, "Nah, I can't be right." They'll then look at the research, like actually do their own due diligence, and think, "Well, actually, I need to sort of keep studying." So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I say to them, because I sometimes get a few will say, "Oh, without insulin, you know, you can't build muscle." They'll say to me, "You really need to raise." And I go, "No, here's a study. The one that I eventually did that video of. Here's a study on the leucine. In a fasted state, you can actually build. I mean, the difference, if you remember the scales, you had really low down here where somebody was in a faster state, and then you had quite this elevation, and in the faster state with leucine, it was just slightly below that.
Mm.
And that person here was basically in a fed state, taking leucine and aminos, and they were just, what was it, 20 or percent more. So, I mean, you still got, people don't realize it, you've got tissue turnover that provides some amino pool as well in the body, but really you need to, it's these molecules are doing signaling things, and I think people have misunderstood what is important in the signaling. Insulin works with leucine and taurine and things like that as part of an insulin, as a part of a signaling thing. It's not like it does the job. No, it
It's part of
signals
the
and says,
matrix. Yeah.
yeah, it's a complex interaction with these molecules and signals. It's a signaling, the same thing, where at the cell wall, it signals and tells it through the GLUT receptors, take in glucose. You could basically engage the Randall cycle, and it can basically just be blasting like mad. But if the cell doesn't want to take it in, it's just going to ignore insulin, even if it's blasting like mad. But that does have ramifications in causing other problems, that overexpression. But it's not basically, it's because the body's never been in that state, because normally that is a physiological state that is very rarely in. It's not like chronically like today, because we've radically changed the way we live.
Yeah.
So it gets into this sort of state where it will go, and then actually eventually over time just burn itself out. It can't do it anymore. And it's sort of it's a bit like the dopamine effect that sort of lowers its sort of effect and then can't manage anymore.
That's completely true. But bodybuilders that watch this at Performance Enhanced, they'll be using insulin at some point, perhaps. They'll notice they'll be using, say it's 100 grams of carbs a day and whatever amount of insulin they're using. They'll find they'll have to increase both of them in order to get the same results.
Exactly.
Just incrementally, your body will need more and more and more and more. At what point do you think, hang on a minute, this isn't going to do anything good for me?
Exactly.
Even pushing it to the extremes, I mean, there's
And
one way to skin a cat,
And over time, they're getting sicker, and they're not gaining any. They're not getting any more gains, and still,
Right.
even at that point, they're not making the connection.
Yeah,
Which is unfortunate.
It's a shame, but it's
Yes,
just
it is.
it's like,
Yeah,
how do you put
because
this information out there?
yeah, I know. But initially, they get all that water retention, that massive water retention, because of what they're doing like that. And yeah, it looks, it sort of amplifies sort of the muscle, sort of it bulges
Yeah.
slightly. But you get that, but it's a very unnatural bulging. If you look at the old bodybuilders, go back to the 60s and 40s and 50s and 70s even, they had it was the proper human composition, but just in a more wider framed, those elements accentuated, but they
Yeah.
didn't bulge in this unnatural way. I don't consider the modern bodybuilders as I think they look grotesque in some regards when they actually have these bulging parts popping out, which are just you'd never seen older bodybuilders in the
Yeah.
past. It's just I and if people think that that is actually of a competition quality standard, I think people have lost the plot in the modern world. You
It's
know,
very it is very
unless you
subjective.
want to transformer.
Yeah, it's very subjective. I mean, I personally don't think that like female bodybuilders look great. That's not me saying what they've achieved isn't amazing. Like it is incredible. You don't see people that muscular like
That's
ever.
right.
But it depends what body do you want to live in. You ask yourself that question. And how do you want to feel? What sort of health status do you want? So you've got to assess all these things. I think it's
That's
very
true.
important.
Exactly.